Support comes from Hampton Roads Community Foundation, partnering with donors from all walks of life to improve southeastern Virginia through grants, scholarships, and leadership initiatives. Learn more at hamptonroadscf.org.
Hello, everyone. I'm Barbara Hamley. President Trump said in a tweet to Norway's prime minister, quote, "Considering your country decided not to give me the Nobel Peace Prize for having stopped 8 wars plus, I no longer feel an obligation to think purely of peace." But in Davos, Switzerland this week, Mr. Trump walked back the military threat against the island and announced that there's a framework in place for Greenland, while at the same time he berated European leaders and NATO. Is the United States still considered a powerhouse that will protect its allies, or is it now a bully that will stand alone? Dr. Eric Claville on the role of the U.S. in world politics. That's next on Another View, right after this national, regional, and local news from NPR and WHRO News.
Discussing today's topics from an African-American perspective, this is Another View.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Hamley. We're going to start our show today on a bit of a sad note. Our wonderful cardiologist and guest on Another View on Health, Dr. Keith Newby. His mother passed on the 17th of this month, and so we want to extend our sincere condolences to the Newby family, Dr. Cassandra Newby Alexander, Dr. James Newby and his family, and Dr. Keith Newby. Keith is the baby, as you guys know. That's what he would say. And the services are this weekend, so we are just sending lots of love on behalf of the Another View crew. If you, audience, would like to send a note of condolences, please email me at contact@anotherviewradio.org. That's contact@anotherviewradio.org, and I will make sure that Keith receives all of your messages. I know when I'm out and about, a lot of times, and people talk about the show, they constantly say, "Dr. Keith Newby, I just love Dr. Keith Newby." So let's show him some love. That's contact@anotherviewradio.org. So many times on this broadcast, Dr. Eric Claville has pointed to world events that could ultimately lead to World War III. Is President Trump's behavior in Davos this week yet another example which could lead us to war? For some perspective, please welcome political and legal analyst Dr. Eric Claville and his award-winning Claville Report. Hey, Eric, how you doing?
Hey, Barbara, how you feel today?
Do you have whiplash? Because I do. in terms of trying to keep up with what is going on. So let's start with, let's take it back a bit. Earlier this week, it was all about Greenland, and the president had said, we will go in and take it by force if we have to. Mm-hmm. We need it for national security. You know, I'm going to levy tariffs on countries if you don't support this, et cetera, et cetera. Give us kind of that scenario and then what happened when he went to Switzerland this week.
Yeah. So, Barbara, to your point, whiplash, I think, by the time we're done, we're going to have PTSD
exactly.
From this. But, really, in all seriousness, I believe right now what we're seeing, just as we're seeing the dismantling of our government and how it operates and walking over the checks and balances of our democracy and ignoring all of the processes in order to create public policy and in order to run an effective and efficient government and bureaucracy for the people. Mm-hmm. We're seeing the same thing happen internationally, and that's because the president's own party, who is in control of Congress, also who is in control of the U.S. Supreme Court 6-3. They have the majority in the House and the Senate. These are individuals that are able to check their president who's in power, any president that's in power, but they're refusing to do so. that is problematic within itself because it doesn't matter who wins. I mean, of course, you run on party lines and so forth, and you're going to coalesce around certain issues. We get it, but overwhelmingly, the operation of government is not partisan. It actually is bipartisan. It actually is neutral. We all, if you qualify at a certain age for Social Security, you get Social Security. That's not a bipartisan. That's not a partisan issue. That's something that happens just because you turn a certain age, and the law creates certain benefits that you receive.
And that's part of our system.
That's part of our system. So many services that we receive as Americans and those who are foreigners that come into our country as immigrants, many services we receive are statutorily created, and it just happens, right? What this administration has done through their plan, which we have talked about, in 2023, 2024, beginning in 2025, Project 2025. That's what it was. It was a part of the Heritage Foundation. Russell Voigt, who is co-author of it, is in the White House now, head of OMB, and spearheading that effort. It is a 900-plus page document in which they have shown exactly what they want to do, including over 100 special interest groups that are provided input across the country, conservative interest groups, religious conservative interest groups, and other groups on that conservative leaning and also extremist part of the party. And every party has their extreme, they have their neutral, and they have those that are more liberal, whether you're liberal conservative or liberal Democrat. So when you take a look at what is happening, it is very to me, Barbara, and this is me talking. So I'm stepping out of analysis and just saying this to me. To me, it is. I'm just in awe of how fast that is taking place. I'm also in awe of how in depth is taking root in every facet of our governmental agencies and departments, and also I'm in shock that no one is standing up within our government to come against it.
It is so interesting. What I found so interesting this week was listening to our European allies and other leaders across the country, across the world,
right,
stand up and very vocally disagree with what the president was doing,
right,
and so forth. But we don't get that from our Congress or our senators. I mean, every now and then on an individual basis, but in terms of being, adamant that this cannot happen,
right.
Where they took a very strong stance
and
said this is not going to happen.
They did. Now, to your original question of Greenland. So that was the precursor of where we are. And what I did was I simply kind of looked at and summarized what is taking place domestically. The same is taking place internationally. Now we'll deal with Greenland, but we'll go back with Venezuela and the tariffs and all of those actions that the White House has taken, and we'll kind of sum it up from there. But as it relates to Greenland is a country that is part of the Kingdom of, we know now, the country of Denmark, or the Kingdom of Denmark. It is a country that...
And it is not Iceland, by the way.
Huh?
I said Greenland is not Iceland.
Correct. That is correct. That is correct. Yes. Geography is very important. Very important. So, yeah, Iceland is totally separate. But so Greenland is that huge block of Arctic ice at the North Pole, right? That's kind of what it. If you kind of look at it, that's kind of where it is, right? It's part of that, and with that, Greenland is very strategic as it relates to military as well and defense. Why is that? If you look at the globe, of course, you look at a map where it's laid out on a piece of paper, flat. You see our countries, the United States in the east, which is the west, and the east, China and Russia, pretty far away. But if you roll it up,
right, and look at it as the globe,
right, as a globe, it's a very short distance across the Arctic from China and Russia over to the west, and vice versa, right? Of course, we know about the Bering Strait, which connects Alaska, which of course Alaska was secure for military purposes also. And with that, a lot of our countries, a lot of our states that we have were acquired for strategic purposes, some being military, and that make the United States more contiguous, right? But with that being said, we've always had, ever since the early 1900s, very friendly, since the World Wars, very friendly relationships with Greenland. At one point, we had up to 17 military bases there, right? Our military posts. We pulled back from those posts, and we're only down to one. The Greenland stated that they're more than happy to work with the United States to have whatever military base that they have that we need or feel for defense purposes. Also, they're also apt to work with us for exploration, for natural resources. But of course, it's a negotiation because they are a separate country. They are sovereign, and this is not colonialism anymore. European countries or white countries just can't go and say, "Hey, I'm gonna take your land again."
Right.
We're not at that point in the world anymore. That doesn't happen. So with that, you saw the European, and the reason why we had that friendly relationship is because of NATO. NATO is probably the most successful alliance of countries in modern time against what would cause a world war, right? Because of the former Soviet Union, and now because of China, and then of course, when you look at the Middle East, more specifically Iran and so forth, but primarily the former Soviet Union. So you have this alliance between the European countries, including the United Kingdom, Great Britain, which is our mother. That's where the United States came out of, and the United States to fight against encroachment from now Russia, former Soviet Union, and also China as well. So with that, we have the Battle of Ukraine, that war where Russia is trying to reclaim Ukraine, which Ukraine used to be the capital of Russia at one time. And that's another Slavic history. We're not going to deal with that. That's another subject. But now we have this president, our president, who has literally damaged the United States reputation, single-handedly damaged it across the European nations to the point where they sent 5 countries at the time, Germany, France, Spain, and a couple others, Sweden was another, and the 5th one escapes me, but they sent troops to Greenland to show the United States, when he said that he would use military force to take it, very similar to Venezuela. And we'll talk about how that's considered, how that kind of connects as well. In order to show that, no, you're not going to do this. If we have to come together, we will. There'll be a fight between us. So it's like brothers fighting brothers for the most part, or cousins fighting cousins. As it relates to the Great Britain and the UK, it's literally brothers fighting brothers. It was Great Britain. That was the other country that sent troops. So with that, and then the statement that he made prior to the Davos summit was also incendiary, to the point where it was the Canadian Prime Minister made the statement. He said, "We don't know if the United States is a stable enough partner anymore. Maybe China is better." And when he said that, it took me back to a personal conversation I had with a colleague who's a businessman over in the continent of Africa. And we were talking about, Trump and so forth, and just catching up. And, I was, going through some things and or what we were going through, and he, back and forth. And he made the statement, and he said, "Eric, maybe it's time for China. We need a new world order."
And someone said, I can't remember which one of our European allies, but the leader said that what happened in Davos was a major change in the world order.
It is.
What the United States is doing.
It is. And again, it is an absolute shame that the president's own party does not check his actions, which are and the White House policies and actions, which are hindering and harming our historical, long-standing relationships in the world. And this is the catalyst. What is happening in the United States, whether it be with ICE, whether it be with the dismantling of our government, which, again, this is not opinion. They wrote it. You could read it. You could hear their own words to make federal government so small and to make federal workers so either cut them with no rhyme or reason, such we did with Doge, or make them so miserable that they want to quit. Who does that to their own house, their own country, right? So just from a personal standpoint, I don't get the thinking of that. However, when it comes to the international part, I believe that what took place over the last several weeks, as it relates to Greenland, I believe that it has done, and others have written about this, but I believe it has done permanent damage to our NATO allies.
So you don't think that we can get back the relationship we had before within NATO once
Barbara,
the administration changes?
I mean, you're talking, today is the 22nd, so it's 1 year and 1 day. So we got 3 more years, right? So, I mean, no, I don't think so. It's kind of like a relationship, right? I mean, if you do me wrong,
you do me wrong, you got to go.
Can we get to that same point that we were before? The answer is no. It just doesn't work there. Now we can get to a new point, but I think this is what's going to happen. I think China now has an opportunity. They're just sitting back. They did not have to attack us at all militarily for us to disintegrate and piece by piece dismantle, or really with a wrecking ball, dismantle our own relationships as the law enforcement of the world and relationships across the world, and become the bully of the world in less than 365 days. They just sat back. Now I believe that they will step in and become a good partner where they wanted to be a part of, but now they will see them as a good partner, or they'll work themselves into that situation, which, let's go back to Venezuela. Venezuela, of course, were their oil. They were trading partners with Russia and also China. So we've actually captured a lot of those oil tankers. And that was in part, there were several reasons why I believe we did that. Number one, we did it because of the encroachment of the East into the Americas, or into our hemisphere, our region. It's kind of like you stay on your side of the world, we stay on our side of the world. And by dealing with,
because Venezuela was selling oil to China and to other Eastern countries. That's okay.
Well, more specifically China and Russia, right?
Okay.
And then with that, we also find so militarily, I believe that we had to, for defense purposes, we had to do something. Not the way that, I don't believe we had to do it the way we did it. Maduro, of course, has been deemed and wanted as a leader out because of the corruption of the country. However, we as a nation and the White House said that, hey, the reason why we want him out is because of drugs, right? He's a major drug dealer. And the indictment that they have for him is he's a narco-terrorist, which means that he not only knew but also participated and benefited from drug trade, but also the connection is that he also then funded terrorist actions against the United States and or its partners, right, or territories or interests. That's a stretch. That's a huge stretch. Now, whether they make it stick, I haven't seen any indictments from this administration stick. Whether it be Lisa Cook, whether it be, go on down the line. None of these have really, really panned out. However, really what has happened is that we ended up going into the country and taking control of the country. And the conversation went from drugs to oil. There's been no conversation in the media about drugs anymore, right?
True.
Again, this is not opinion. This is all written. You can hear it. So that's where that is. And of course, you look at a little backfire.
But even you said about the backfire, because the oil companies that were supposed to go in, he kept saying they're going to go in and they're going to fix the infrastructure and they're going to make us all this money. But yet there's been pushback from the oil companies.
Absolutely. Because again, you would like to, anytime you go into a venture like that, you like to have everybody at the table and talk about it first. You like to do a SWOT analysis, you like to do a strategic plan, but that's not the way this operates.
So is the ultimate goal, does Trump really believe that the United States can stand on its own, doesn't need anybody at any time because we are the greatest.
Yeah, again, that's that's where arrogance comes in and causes you to have folly, right? Causes you to fall, being puffed up to a point to where you can't hear sound guidance and wisdom, and that is the danger zone that we're in, because you have a leader like that. Now, again, here's our president. He is duly elected. The majority of Americans voted for this president, right? And we know what this president was, how he would govern from the first 4 years. All right. And so there's no buyer's remorse here. You knew exactly where you're getting into.
Well, you're not allowed to have buyer's remorse.
I mean,
there may be some buyer's remorse. You don't think?
Like if this was a return desk at a merchandise store, they were like, clearly you knew what this was, so we're not going to take it back. But I make that point because as Americans, we're going to be left holding the bag with this, right? Because of course the president, he's older, but also he's always been for himself. We saw that in his business dealings before he came into power as president, and we also see that now, right? So again, this is no big surprise. It's nothing that we think is, oh no, we just discovered this. We knew what it was. We know what it is. Now we got to deal with it. The way we deal with it in our democracy is checks and balances. The problem with our Republican Congress, who are in control, that can't control this. They have the power to control this. The Democrats are in the minority. They cannot control this. The Republicans are the ones in the majority, both in the judicial branch and also in the legislative branch.
And they're not checking and balancing.
They are not checking. They're not balancing.
757-440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240 are the numbers to call to join our conversation. What questions do you have about how America is being perceived internationally? Give us a call, 757-440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. So President Trump also announced the Peace Board while he was overseas. It cost $1 billion with a B dollars in order to maintain a permanent position on the Peace Board. He has stated that it could take over for the United Nations.
Right.
What do you anticipate out of the Peace Board?
I anticipate a lot of him making a lot of money because he's giving himself he's the permanent chairman, not the president of the United States, but he himself.
Yeah.
Once again, this is just another example of how our president sees himself first and foremost, and how he views the rest of the world, and how he doesn't care about process at all, nor what we call order. Whether it be, tearing down part of the White House without getting proper approval to do so, whether it be putting his name on a building, more specifically the Kennedy Center. So it's now the Trump Kennedy Center, where he puts his name before, a president who came before him. Many other things, we could name, but this is, to me, it's going to be ineffective. The United Nations itself, they see themselves, meaning the rest of the world, are taking note of this. That is why I believe China has a great opportunity to come in and prove themselves to be good partners and have the rest of the world look to them for sound and calm and in guidance and wisdom on the world stage.
Eric, if we lose our predominance in the world, can we ever gain it back?
No superpower through history. Now, I'll say this, historically looking, no country that was once the hegemony of the world or the superpower has ever regained that status. Whether it be, we can go all the way back to Egypt. We can look at the Greeks, the Roman, Ottoman Empire, Persian Empire. We can also look at the colonial empires, whether it be the Spanish Armada, which had the greatest naval navy in the world at that time. We could look at Great Britain, which is a shell of itself. The UK, and the list goes on and on. But the answer is no, through a historical lens. Now, is it possible? The answer is yes. Anything's possible. But if you're looking at history and the prediction of what we can do, then the answer is no. Right now, we can't build enough submarines and aircraft carriers. We don't have enough people, military-wise, in order to, take on the world. We cannot do that. That is just illogical. And any general, any defense person in the Department of Defense, not the Defense Secretary, right, or the Department of War Secretary, but I'm speaking of career generals, individuals who, in the War College, this is something that they teach. This is something that they should be advising and can advise a commander-in-chief that would listen.
If you're just joining us, we're talking about the role of the United States on the world political stage with political and legal analyst Dr. Eric Claville, creator of the award-winning Claville Report. 757-440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240 are the numbers to call to join our conversation. I want to play a clip that where President Trump is talking about the wars that he stopped. Let's take a listen.
Okay, yeah.
I won't bore you with the facts, but we ended 8 wars in 8 months, and I think there's another one coming. I thought the one coming was a lot easier than the Middle East. We did great with the Middle East, but with Russia, I thought that was going to be an easy one, Ukraine, Russia, because of the relationship with President Putin. But that didn't work out too well so far, but it will. We'll get it done too, but it'll be that'll be number 9. I think that's just about it.
Perhaps my not paying attention internationally, I didn't even know there were 8 wars going on. But what are these 8 wars that he's talking about?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we have conflicts all over the world.
Yeah.
That are happening. There's definitely more than 8 conflicts that we have. We're starting quite a few of them ourselves. Whether it be bombing Iran, Nigeria on Christmas Day, or taking over an independent country of Venezuela, and appointing the 2 people that are going to run it at the press conference when Marco Rubio. It's like Marco was like, "I'm just hearing this for the first time myself, so let me get under this." But again, I have no idea what those 8 wars are.
It's just amazing. So President Trump held a press conference this week prior to going to Davos, where he touted the accomplishments of his first year in office. And he started the press conference by showing photo after photo after photo after photo of Black and brown people who have been arrested with ICE, the worst of the worst, et cetera. Was that a dog whistle that particularly minority communities need to be paying attention to?
Absolutely. When you take a look at the policy, and I want our listener to understand that when you look at immigration, ICE has always existed. Right. So it's always been a part of what that agency does to remove individuals who are in the country illegally. What this policy under this president now has done, it has taken resources and where it's pouring resources into this specific area. They're hiring warm body. If you warm body, they're giving $50,000 signing bonus, student loan. Now, this is the profession they're giving student loan repayment for as well. Out of all the professions of intellect, this is the one they're giving student loan repayments for. So with that, they're giving them the charge, and we see it. We see it happening in real time on television and social media. They're giving them the charge and the okay to harass and do whatever they want to Black and brown people, and they're stopping them based upon what the Supreme Court said you can't, but they're stopping them based upon color, on heritage, and accent, and demanding to see their papers. So just imagine you're walking down the street and you happen to speak Spanish, right? You literally can be stopped. You literally can be detained. You literally can be roughed up and harassed by ICE, who are covered, faces covered, and ask, are you a citizen? Should you be in this country? And if you can't show documentation, you can be detained and held, which nobody knows. The process in order to locate a person, a family member detained, or to have them, if they're illegally detained, meaning that they are citizens, that process is so arduous. I mean, it is one where it becomes it becomes a dog chasing its tail within itself, but it's created for that purpose. So again, this is, if you can't see it, this policy is rooted in racism to its highest, of what our country was created when we indoctrinized slavery and also decimated the Native American population. And Barbara, I said this on one show, and I've been doing more thinking on it and reading, and I believe there's a direct parallel here. William H. Parker, the longtime police chief of Los Angeles, he created the Los Angeles Police Department, which oversaw, or during that time period, the Watts riots. His predecessor, his mentee, was the one that militarized the police department, which saw the beating of Rodney King and the riots during that time period. We saw that, but the way it was created, it was created because he himself, during that time period of the 50s and 60s, when you could speak, just very blatant and egregious language about black people, and not be held accountable. Which
you mean like today?
Like today. So he said, listen, he recruited whites from Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, who were white men that were upset about the civil rights gains of blacks and he said Mexicans during that time period, and who wanted to come there to the police department. He would hire them because he believed that they knew how to handle people like that. And some of you can go on YouTube and look at it. He was like, we didn't ask these people to come here. They just came here. Of course, the great migration to the West were opportunities for black families that they didn't have in the South, that were educated and also to work in various areas like shipyards and things of that nature. Half of my mother's family moved from where we were in the South to California.
But just like they moved north.
Right, from the city of Richmond, which is, of course, outside of Oakland, all the way down to Los Angeles, where you had opportunities there. So, when you take a look at that, this administration has now recruited that same type of mentality, that same type of person, and provided them with the tools and the backing of the federal government in order to execute the policies that we saw during the time of the in LA Watts riots, or Rodney King and the riots that broke out because of the egregious behavior of police departments there against those communities, right? So we see that. And now, just earlier this week, there's a memo that gives ICE agents the ability, under a very narrow ruling, to enter into a person's home. The memo says they may, quote, arrest and detain aliens, unquote, in their places of residence who are subject to final orders of removal issued by immigration judges, the Board of Immigration Appeals, or the U.S. District or Magistrate judges. Now, of course, the Fourth Amendment prohibits you going into somebody's house without a warrant.
Right.
But this is a warrantless, forceful entry. That means they can get out their car, kick the door in, get and do whatever they want. And they could be mistaken. But if they thought that there was a final order, that's there. Because what's happening is a lot of persons are getting harassed. A lot of persons are getting pulled over. We see the social media. We see the posts. And they're naturalized, or they are citizens.
There was one clip that I saw where the ICE agent said, "Are you a citizen or are you naturalized?" Which, if you're naturalized, you are a citizen.
Right. Well, right now they're trying to find a way to revoke naturalization as well. So just like birthright citizenship. So again, this is a policy. Again, it's in Project 2025. And if you had any doubt that these policies are rooted and racist agenda, this should erase any doubt. But really, it's the idea of this particular group of individuals who are in control of our federal government now. Okay, the Stephen Millers of the world, the Russell Voice of the world, who are in control, that are white nationalists for the most part from the ideology, that are now have seen the country and the statistics become more black and brown, and they're wanting to come against it. Now, what is happening is black and brown people, when you look at immigration, even go back to slavery, is and I'm not going to say greatest gift, but it is the greatest working force of our country to build it to what it is today. Mm-hmm. You get a quarter of a millennium, 250 years of free labor to build a country from nothing, where you didn't have to pay, right? Wages, or you didn't have to pay, and no generational wealth was passed down. That causes you as a nation, whether you're a baby or not, it's like super formula. You're jacked up and you're growing at an exponential rate that other countries could not. And now you get this place where individuals from the rest of the world, whether it be the Chinese that came to build the railroads, whether it be the Europeans that come and work in the coal mines, whether it be the individuals from Latin American countries to work agriculture. You get all these individuals wanting to converge on now this country where they can find an opportunity. And the immigrants build this country from scratch to what it is today. Mm-hmm. So that greatest force of that workforce, the greatest workforce that we've ever had to build a country, is what this white nationalist ideology wants to go against, because, again, of a false miseducation and a false fear of the same people that want to build a country and be here.
Mm-hmm. So, I know this is going to cause controversy, but I'm going to ask the question anyway.
I mean, everything is it? And again,
but here's the question. So, if you think about the opioid epidemic, okay, for the 90s, the 80s and 90s, even further back, for black people, it was a crime. Right? Period. Crack cocaine, the opioid epidemic, and so forth. When it got to suburbia, and it became more of the suburban white teens that were dying and so forth, then it became a health issue, and people started paying attention and putting resources and so forth into that. Are we going to have to wait until ICE starts picking out people, white people, frankly, and they start getting kills like Renee Good, before somebody says this is enough, we're not going to do this anymore?
Well, from what you just stated, historically we know in our country that if there's a white face that's attached to a crisis, it jumps to the top of the line. Whether it be missing children, missing teens, whether it be what you just stated, the drug addiction, it hits the suburbs or it hits communities where it's not supposed to hit. It's supposed to stay within poor communities and communities of color, black and brown communities. Those things get more of a microscope on it than anything else. We see it in our past governor's administration and also Attorney General, where they highlighted the opioid epidemic, which was one of his accomplishments. And those were good things that were done.
I'm not.
Again, we don't
ultimately
want to,
because ultimately it meant everybody did get help. But the point being, we had to wait until it got to that point.
And also with education, because part of integration was if schools are integrated, because at that point it was decided that it was better to integrate students for one purpose of the resources that the white kids would get into segregated schools, the black kids would get it as well. But also it served as integration across all society. Because if you go to the same schools, then housing, then jobs. So, of course, military was the first part of it. So, again, that was part of that strategy. But to your point, whether it's education, whether it's missing persons, whether it's drug abuse, addiction, or whatever the case may be, if it has a white face, then it's deemed to be more valuable. We could see it in earnings. If you're white, you're going to earn more, for the same job. If you have a white sounding name, these studies have been done, and they're clear. So these are not opinions that you and I are talking
Right.
about. We can literally point to a minimum of half a dozen or dozens and dozens of examples and studies that have been done on this subject. You know, the killing of Renee Good, I think it actually showed our country quite a bit. And with that, her being killed, right? Many law enforcement question the action of that ICE agent as relates to, are you trying to prevent a death? Are you trying to kill someone, or what are you trying to do? I heard one former police chief say, the first shot I can understand, but you have to answer for those other two, right? And the way that they were shot. Of course, the federal government and Trump, from a press conference, they have.
Oh, they had the narrative automatically before there was even any investigation into what happened.
Yeah, he's cleared of everything, and of course, investigations now. They want to launch investigations on her family and also the governor and also the mayor. And the mayor said one thing. He said that it used to be, it was the federal government, we trusted them, their word. If the federal government said it, we trusted it. He said, now that day is gone. The world is saying the same thing. It used to be,
if the United States says something.
if the United States said it, then we're fine. There was and I'm not going to quote the source because I'm drawing a blank, but there was an ambassador that told a story of something where it was an interaction with a foreign country, and we were mistaken about something, and the ambassador said, "Listen, we're sorry, we said something that didn't pan out, wasn't true, but we're correcting it." And the person from the foreign country says, "It's okay. You're the United States. We know that you're going to make good, and you know that you're going to get it right." No more can the world say that with the current leader that we have. And we blame no one but ourselves. No one but ourselves, because we see it happening in real time. We're experiencing it. We're living it. And the representatives that we have put in our federal government, our Congress, that who also nominated the individuals to the federal courts, who were voted on under the Mitch McConnell Senate, who are now in the federal court system, whether it be district, appellate, or the U.S. Supreme Court. We have only ourselves to blame because they're not holding this individual accountable. Senator Goldwater, during the time of the Nixon Watergate scandal, he walked into the White House, into the Oval Office. Nixon asked him, "Do I have any support?" And he said, Mr. President, you have no support.
He told him the truth.
It's time to resign. And one sentence, and he left. Who is that Goldwater that will tell this president enough is enough? Who is this Goldwater that will tell the staff that these policies are not what the American people or even the world expects from us? There's a process, there's an order. Even if you want to champion these policies, let's go through it through the proper order, and let's have the proper checks and balances, because by doing that, it's more opportunity to get it right than to get it wrong.
So the people who are in Congress and in the Senate today, Republicans, are they afraid that they won't get reelected, or are they afraid of the retribution of Trump that keeps them from doing what a lot of people would think would call the right thing to do?
Both. There is a group out there, and we know them from January 6th, right? J6, that converged upon the capital of our country, the center of power, superpower of our world, on a false narrative of a stolen election, which has been proven false time and time again through the courts, the whole nine. And they converge, whether it be those who are poor, those who are working class with families, or whether it be those who are very rich that flew in on their private planes in order to basically stop a legal and constitutional process and overthrow our government. Now, these aren't people that we would consider crazy. These are our neighbors, our friends, people we see at work, people we see on the street. These are our brothers and sisters, American brothers and sisters, that converge. And over again, those individuals being arrested and prosecuted. until our president came in office and basically wiped all of their convictions away by giving them all pardons. Those individuals are still out there, and those individuals, some are very vocal, whether it be with their words, whether it be the display of force. But there are individuals who have spoken up, and of course, one tweet goes out, and there are individuals whose family or them were threatened because of that, because of just speaking up. You know, we live in a time. There used to be a time where persons protested and spoke up, and they knew that it was a possibility that their lives would be taken. Mm-hmm. A lot of those individuals, if we look during what I call the classical civil rights era of the 50s and 60s, whether it be Medgar Evers, whether it be Fannie Lou Hamer, whether it be Dr. King, whether it be Malcolm X, and then even our elected officials of Bobby Kennedy, and of course his brother, John F. Kennedy Jr., and even Abraham Lincoln, who John Wilkes Booth manifesto, if you go back in history and read it, was based upon his anger of him freeing the slaves. Again, racism is rooted deep in our society, and it is the miseducation of that we have provided as a country to individuals, our more specifically our white males that are committing these atrocities and crimes against people that are black and brown. And if you look throughout history, these assassinations, again, mostly, not all, so about 9 out of 10, because of course those that killed Malcolm X were black. Mm-hmm. But also, if you look at what happened in South Carolina, that same manifesto, those racist ideologies, right? Those false fears, it's rooted deep in our culture. And because it's rooted, our law is the weed killer that keeps it from growing. Our law has been extracted, and those weeds have started to grow to a point where they're overtaking our good trees of value of democracy, our good trees of value of checks and balances, and our good trees and values of American values. And it's going to take a overhaul sooner than later, where you can't tell the weeds from the trees, and it's going to be too late at some point. We always get to that point where we say, oh, we can still do X, Y, Z. Well, that's false, right? You have to check things in real time, because if you let it linger, then you'll cause these actions to not be able to be pulled back, and the negative will take place.
So we only have about 5 minutes left, but millions of people have been taken to the streets. I mean, they've been protesting, they've been marching, they've been frustrated, but it hasn't been enough, apparently, to move their representatives to a different space.
Right.
How do we overcome the apathy?
Well, it's that NIMBY effect. And when you were talking about the white face moving things to a point where it becomes critical, it's that not in my backyard, right? Mm-hmm. So if it's not in my backyard, and I believe that, these immigrants, these, Hispanics, these black people, they are criminals. Yeah, all of them, they need to be out, right? Even though most that are stopped and detained are not.
Are not, yeah.
Right. So again, this false fear that has been stoked. And as long as, and I'm answering your question, but as long as this continues, that false fear without someone speaking up saying, no, this is not it. And let that bear go water. He's got to stand up and say, no, this is not it. Right. That's what it's going to take. It's going to take someone in power.
Do you think any of that type conversation is going on behind the scenes?
It is, but they are.
But it's still not strong enough to make him to make him listen.
No, I mean, again, what's happening? We get these briefings, and of course, representatives are having conversations with members of their foreign governments and so forth, and there are members that get intelligence briefings, and we know that we do have 2 members of the U.S. Senate who are on those very important committees, more specifically U.S. Senator Mark Warner, who's up for re-election this year, as well for another 6-year term. So it'll be very interesting to see who runs against him here here. But in the midterm elections, we're looking for a Democratic tsunami wave. But even with that, it's got to be if the Democrats do it right, they have to outline what has happened and show that visually to the American people over and over again, and then hold those individuals accountable for what they have done. Again, under the law and under the proper political process, because if you do it that way, then it will always stand, as opposed to doing it the way that it's being done now, where the president is using his powers for retribution, and it's just not. It's just not a good look. It's what it is. It's just wrong.
I know that 2 minutes that we
have we got any calls?
Yeah, I know. That's because people are listening. I know that we are focused, you and I, others like us, because we're in this business.
Right.
But the average American who is worried about how I'm going to pay for the gas that I need to get to the job that's not paying me enough to take care of the rest of my bills, they're like, yeah, whatever, you know. And I think until we can get everybody to a point where there's enough pressure, I don't know what else can be done.
Well, again, that leader has to stand up. That's in opposition, right? And that's literally what it has to take. On a community level, we continue to do what you and I are doing, and others are doing. Whether it be on the air, whether it be grassroots, what we do in government here, in state general assemblies. But ultimately, to your point, Barbara, until it reaches, and again, it's unfortunate that it happens this way, and this is just the way it happens, whether it's now or in the past, until it reaches a boiling point to where it affects everyday American life, right? Because even what ICE is doing is happening in L.A. It's happening. It tried to happen in Chicago. They didn't play that.
Right. It's happening in Minnesota.
But it's happening in Minnesota now.
Right.
And who would have thought that Minnesota would be the place of this type of action, whether it be, the murder of George Floyd or the killing of Renee Good, right? I mean, who would have thought that Minnesota would be this place where we would see the conversion of these ideologies come head to head. So again, more to come.
As always, Dr. Claville and his award-winning Claville Report, thank you so much for your analysis. And we will continue to have this conversation and to try to bring some new light for people so that they can at least start to think about it if they're not out marching in the streets.
Yeah. At the end of the day, it's our country.
Absolutely. And audience, thank you for taking the time to listen to our show today. You can find all of our Another View broadcasts at WHRO.org, on Spotify, or whatever platform you use for your podcast listening pleasure. Next week on Another View, it's Another View on health, and we're going to be talking about the new food pyramid. You think it's healthy? We'll see. Our theme music is an original composition created especially for Another View by Jay Sennett. Lisa Godley is our show producer. Jordan Christie is our audio engineer. And Dr. Barry Graham would have answered our phones if you had called. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. The forecast calls for significant snow and rain and sleet and everything else this weekend. So please make sure you are prepared. Stay warm, stay safe, and enjoy the weekend. We'll be back again with you next time on Another View.
Support comes from Hampton Roads Community Foundation, carrying out your charitable wishes forever, whether it's helping shelter animals, feeding the homeless, enhancing the arts, or supporting students. Learn more at leaveabequest.org.